And I certainly hope that, having talked for as long as I did about fake news sites and about the news and media in general, that I didn't give the impression that you should simply believe everything that you hear from mainstream media or professional journalist sources, because I certainly didn't mean to get that message across if anybody thought that that's what I was saying. I didn't get that particularly in the comments or anything, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. Questioning everything you hear and know and learn is what critical thinking is all about, and that includes from mainstream media sources. So I've been asked, though, of course, to talk about how do you find out? How do you know? How do you come to conclusions about things? Because there comes a point along the line with almost any subject where we do have to come to some conclusion. We have to make up our minds to some degree or another, and that's fine. What I'm proposing in terms of critical thinking is not that you don't come to conclusions or come to, a view on the thing, but that you always be willing to adjust your thinking and reconsider that position. That's all. But in terms of how do you come to those conclusions, well, Google is a wonderful thing. We live in the information age now, and there is so much information out there that, again, we can go into information overload, but the tools that we have available to us to learn and know and grow intellectually now are better than anything we've ever had in the entire history of mankind. And as much as I rail against anti-social media and fake news sites and even real news sites who are supposed to be giving us facts, and all of that, as much as I might rail against those things, I will also acknowledge that we live in a time of more potential for growth and knowledge than ever in our history. This really is the best of times in so many ways. And if you can get past the curtain of bad news and horribleness that the media likes to throw in your face every day, and see past that, the good news that exists in our world is reflected in so many ways right now. We've talked in the past on this podcast about how, crime statistics, for example, are, lowest that they've been in decades and decades, right? Violent crime is down, not up. You have less chance of being hurt, leaving your home and going to the store, going out and going around, than you ever have in many, many years, maybe in your whole lifetime, maybe since you were born. So that's good news, right? And I believe that the dissemination, that the availability of information that we have to us now is one of the reasons for that, because it does give you more power to be able to know more, right? And you can look things up faster and easier than ever. And our minds are changing as a result of that. The way we live our lives is changing drastically as a result of that. And they're not all negative changes, they're changes for sure. But, the fact that most of us walk around not remembering phone numbers anymore, that's not necessarily a bad thing, depending on your point of view, right? It is if you end up in jail and you got to call your mom, you can't remember her number. You got to call your parents, or you got to call your lawyer or something. You don't even have their number if you don't have your phone on you. But that's a rather extreme example, right? We've freed up a lot of our brain space, right, with things we used to have to memorize or things we had to know, that now we just carry it around with us, in our phones or in our computers. These have become extensions of our own minds, of our own selves. And I don't know that that's a bad thing. It's simply a change and an evolution forward, if we use it to our advantage. That's really the kicker, is how do we use it? Do we use it to be stupider, or do we use it to be smarter? Because we can go both ways. And there's lots of anecdotes, lots of examples of ways we've used technology to be stupider. But I think there's just as many, and I think probably more examples of how we're actually using it to be smarter. So, coming back around to Google searches, this tool is, it's an amazing tool for potential knowledge if you know how to use it. It's not so helpful if you type in a couple keywords of something you're looking for and you get back 8 million hits. Okay, 8 million search results. Okay, great. And you go through the first page or two, and maybe that's the information you're looking for, and maybe it's not. A couple things on Google searches, of course. The first point is you don't want to do Google searches so that you find the first, this is the classic meme, so that you find the first thing that agrees with what you already thought, and then go, oh, okay, there it is, I proved it, right? No, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But you do want to, first you want to be able to narrow that target down. And I don't know how many of you are aware of this. I had to kind of hunt for it. But there are advanced search pages on Google. They're not easy to find. You actually have to type in advanced search page to get to it, because there's no, at least on my Google page, there wasn't any button that led to the more advanced searches. But that's really the best way to do a search, is you get to that advanced Google page and you type in your keywords, but then you take a few more seconds, just a few. It's really not that much longer to do an advanced search rather than just a search off the toolbar. The search bar that you get on Google will auto complete itself based on what other people have been searching for, what's trending on Google. But that's not necessarily always the best way for you to find the information you're looking for. If you're looking for what's popular or what's trending or what other people have been looking at, and that is one kind of search you can do, then that's great. The autocomplete function of Google is wonderful for you. But if you're doing a broader search for knowledge or information, then you're going to have to not use that autocomplete function. You're going to want to use your advanced search page on Google and narrow the target down, right? And this takes a little bit of practice, but it is if you're asking me how to do this, well, this is one way to do it, right? Is don't go by what have been popular searches, go by the more complete, broad search of all the information. And using your keywords and using the fields on the advanced search page to narrow the target more specifically to the language, maybe the country that you're looking for, if it's country specific or region specific or date specific, right? You can use that advanced search page to narrow down the target that way and focus more closely in on the exact information that you're looking for. This will also, by the way, prevent you from being derailed in your searches, because believe me, I understand how when you start looking for item X and Google presents you with items A, B, C, D, and E as well as X, boy, A, B, and C sure look interesting. Ooh, wow, what's that? What? I didn't know that. And before you know it, you've wasted half an hour goofing around on something that you had no intention of looking at in the first place. So by narrowing your search parameters in the first place, you'll reduce the amount of dispersal and misdirection that goes on the internet, because man, there's just all kinds of fascinating information out there. I never imagined for a microsecond that I would be interested in the snail races that were occurring in Guatemala when I was looking for, gifts for my girlfriend. But that can happen, What? I didn't know about that. And before you know it, you're looking at, wedding cake frostings that are most popular in Germany. It's like certainly interesting, but not particularly what you are looking for in the middle of your workday. So anyway, using the more advanced functions can narrow the focus of your search, and you also won't end up with 8 million pages to look at. You're really using this advanced search function properly when you're getting down to less than 100 results on your searches. And you only have to go through a page or two of the Google search results and really getting focused in on what you're looking for. So that's one way of going about, more efficiently finding the information that you're looking for. Now, as far as verifying information, there was an article by Heather Walpert Gowron. I think that's how you say her name. She's gave some teaching advice that was very helpful, and I linked to her article in the show notes here. But she refers to triangulating the data, and that means for her that what that really means is finding 3 sources of information, or 3 verified separate places to source information from, right? In other words, if you're looking for something and you find it, see if you can find it again from somewhere else. And if it's really sketchy or really doubtful or really questionable information, see if you can find it again, right? Find 3 sources for your information, in other words. That's important because that will also break you out of the fake news circle for almost every time, because those fake news sites, as I went over last week, are almost always some random blogger somewhere writing clickbait articles in order for him to make money. But he is maybe sharing, maybe that article gets shared, and when I say 3 sources for information, I'm talking about 3 different sources of information, not the same article copied 3 times by 3 different sources, right? If you're finding the same article Michael Jackson found alive in New Hampshire, if you're seeing that article and then you can't find anything about that anywhere else, okay, good, odds are it's probably not true. But if you're finding that same article copied and pasted 3 different news sources, that's not what I'm talking about. You want to find 3 independent vectors on that information, right, coming down and drilling down to that information to actually verify the information, right? And that is, it's a rule of thumb. It is not an absolute certainty that information will then absolutely be objectively true. But it's a rough rule of thumb you can use as a guide to help in verifying information. All right. And now that I think I've beaten that probably into the ground, the Wade and Tavris gave some other general critical thinking guidelines that I thought might be kind of fun to go over for a minute, or 2 or 3. And they gave 8 different points here that we'll go over. First one, ask questions. Be willing to wonder. Always be on the lookout for questions that have not been answered in the textbooks, by the experts in the field, or by the media. Be willing to ask, what's wrong here? And/or, why is this the way it is? And how did it come to be that way? And this is just, a really, really good guideline, because this really returns you to a way of thinking that we really had when we were kids. It's that level of wonder and curiosity and wanting to know. That is a really good place to be, because it's wide open to receiving information, but when you apply the skill set that you have as a critical thinker, it doesn't mean that just because you're receiving information you have to believe it or you have to think it's true. This is unfortunately where little kids are at, is they receive information and they haven't yet developed the critical thinking skills to process the information. But if you can retain or adopt that same level of wonder and awe and curiosity without the gullibility, then boy, that is really a good place to be as a critical thinker. The next point, define the problem. An inadequate formulation of question can produce misleading or incomplete answers. Ask neutral questions that don't presuppose answers. Again, very, very brilliant piece of advice. And this also works for that Google searching I was talking about. Really narrow down, what is it I'm trying to find out about? That will keep you from going astray on lots of different tangents or finding non sequitur information that might be interesting and might appear to be related to what you're talking about, but in fact is not, right? An example might be if you're wondering about who I am, and you were to ask, on your search questions, or if you were to inquire with other people, why is Chris Shelton such a dork? Well, you're going to receive information that is only going to be directed and focused on my dorkiness. But if you want to actually know about me, you're probably going to want to focus on more than just my dorkiness. Sure, I've got answers to the question of why am I dorky, but I've also got other answers to that will give you a more complete picture of me if you were to ask a more focused question of, what has Chris Shelton accomplished in his life? Or what books has Chris Shelton written? Or what shows has Chris Shelton produced? Or something more focused on, things I've actually done or produced that will tell you about my dorkiness, but will also tell you about other things about me too. So you wouldn't get an incomplete answer or a prejudicial answer. You see the point? All right, the next point. Examine the evidence. Ask yourself, what evidence supports or refutes this argument and its opposition? Just because many people believe, including so-called experts, it doesn't make it so. Now, this is really important. And when you're examining evidence, you have to really take the time to examine all the evidence. I really try to do this by taking the time to look at or listen to people that I don't agree with. And I know I don't agree with them, but I take some time almost every day. For example, if I'm driving in my car and I'm scanning through the radio station and Rush Limbaugh comes on, well, I'm going to tell you right now, I can't stand that guy. 25 years ago, I thought he was the bomb. I thought he was awesome. I thought Rush Limbaugh was totally on top of everything. Now I can't stand the guy. But I take the time to listen to him. My views have changed, but just because they've changed doesn't mean they've changed for the better. I can be completely wrong on so many things, and I know that. And so I take the time to listen to somebody that I strongly disagree with most of the time. And often in doing that, I sometimes find little bits and pieces of things that even he says that I can agree with. And I don't listen from the point of view of, oh God, now I got to listen to this windbag again. I honestly just listen to what he's saying. And I compare it and evaluate it to what I already know. And then I have to make decisions about whether I'm going to agree or disagree if he's giving opinions. If he's giving facts, there is no argument about agreeing or disagreeing. They're facts, right? There's a difference between his opinion about things and facts about things. I don't dispute his facts. I will dispute his opinions, right? So that's, now the facts part, of course, you have to be pretty discerning on that, because somebody like Rush Limbaugh will twist and alter facts also, right? Somebody like Rush Limbaugh, I say that as though we don't all do that. So anyway, you just have to be a discerning listener, but an open listener. Okay, that's what I'm really stressing here, right? Is I do take the time to do that. I've listened to Hannity, I've listened to Bill O'Reilly, I've listened to Rush Limbaugh. I've gone out of my way to read, alt-right or conservative-based media. And I try to do that now as much as I will look at or listen to or read liberal-based media sources, right? And knowing full well that I'm listening to or reading biased media sources one way or the other, right? And I try to focus on the fact that that bias exists and be cognizant of that. So anyway, in examining evidence, point is really do yourself the favor of examining all the evidence on something, right? And if you go into a position, and we often do, where we've already decided on what our view is going to be on a thing, right? Try not to do that. When receiving new information, try to just have an open mind. All right.